Okay, so we're gonna continue making the base for the rocket. So we're gonna be focusing on this part of the rocket. Okay, so what I did is that I push all these objects upward, so I have enough space to create the bottom engine for the rocket. Okay, so I'm gonna use cylinder again to create this bottom engine, and I'm gonna go to my vertex. Alright, so make sure all the vertex are being selected. So I'm gonna use number 4, so that way I can click and drag the whole upper vertex, and I can use scale to kind of like shrink it down a little bit. Okay, and I go back to number 5 to kind of adjust the position of this engine. Okay, now I'm going to use this function called Extrude. Okay, so what Extrude does, it allows you to create a new shape depending on what face that you currently selected. Okay, so let's say I'm going to use this cube. Okay, and I'm going to go to my face component, right click and face, and by applying Extrude to this face, it allows me to kind of like create new form. So right now I'm pulling a new face, and it will create me these new parts of that cube. Okay, I can do the same thing with a couple of the faces. So I'm selecting this and holding shift and apply the extrude here, and I go back to my move and I pull upward. Okay, so that's how you actually use extrude to a face. Okay, now at the same time I can also apply the extrusion to go inward. Okay, so I'm going to select these two faces, and I can push it downward, or inwards rather. Okay, like that. Now just be careful when you're using inward extrusion, because whenever you see this black or that flickering color happening in your object, that means there's something wrong. Okay, so I'm going to undo. Usually when you apply the inward extrusion, you have to scale first like this. Okay, so it will give you enough gap, and then you can apply the second extrusion for the extrude to go inside. Okay, so there's a difference between the extrude inward and extrude outward. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the object and go back to this engine part. Now I want to select all these bottom region, or bottom faces rather, so I'm holding shift to select slowly, one by one. Alright, and make sure I press 4 and nothing else are selected. Okay, you don't want a case where this one also gets selected. Okay, so make sure these are deselect only the bottom region. Okay, and again I press 5, and this time I'm going to create inward extrusion. So like I mentioned before, whenever you create the inward extrusion, you have to scale first, okay, to give you enough gap, so that way you can do the second extrusion for the tunnel. Okay, so this is the second extrusion, and I'm going to push inside a little bit, just like that. Okay, so while these are being selected, I'm gonna just scale downward a little bit, just like that. Okay, so by just using this simple extrusion, I can create this nice looking engine. Okay, and again I go back to object mode, and I'm going to add a couple of lines, so that will allow me to give me some extra line at the top, at the bottom, so I can extrude this little notch here. Okay, so go ahead and use the previous tool that we learned before. So it's insert edge loop, click and drag somewhere around there, and the same thing here, click and drag and let go. Okay, and I'm gonna go to my face mode this time. Alright, and select. Okay, so if you're unable to select, you need to go to here, select tool, Go back to face, and then you can select. Right, so you can select, you skip one while holding shift, select, 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 and select. Okay, make sure nothing else are selected. And again, we're going to use the same function, just extrude, and I'm just going to use this blue arrow. Okay, so that way it will extrude like that automatically. Okay, or following the face normal rather. Okay, so once you finish, again, I want to click here, and I go back to my object mode, and that's the result of that notch. Okay, and don't forget to rename. So this is the bottom engine underscore geo. Okay, so it seems like we are finished with the bottom engine. Then we can move to the lower region of this wing. Okay, now this wing is rather simple, so I'm going to use a box, right, and I'm going to push it up, right, and make it taper. So I'm using scale. It'll be around that size. Okay, make it longer, press 4. Okay, so I'm going to my vertex. I'm going to select these two and push downward a little bit. Same thing with this, push downward a little bit, and this one a little bit. Okay, and now I have like a nice looking wing. Okay, so I go to my object mode, and I'm going to hide all the other parts, and I'm going to be focusing on this one. Now, if you look at the reference picture, there are 4 different wings that you have to create. Okay, so rather than creating things from scratch, what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate. Okay, so I'm going to press Ctrl D to duplicate. So Ctrl D to duplicate an object. Okay, but you can also use Ctrl C and V to copy. But this time I'll just use this. Okay, so Ctrl D will allow me to create a new object, okay, based on what you selected and paste in the same location. Okay, so right now I have 2 different wings. Okay, now you notice that I have to rotate the wing. So if I use rotate, I can rotate like that. Okay, so while this is open, right, like that, I can type the exact parameters. Okay, so let's say you want to rotate about 90 degrees, so I can type this 90, and I get this exact location. Okay, so and then from here, right, we're just going to move this manually. Okay, and I can unhide all the other object. Okay, now of course there is a better way to create and more accurate way to create object in Maya, in which you can use snapping and duplicate spatial. But as for now, because this is a very basic introduction module, so I'm just gonna do this manually. Okay, so again I'm going to duplicate, right, move it, and I'm gonna rotate it. Okay, so I want to type this 90, and I'm gonna put somewhere around there. Okay, very basic, very simple. Okay, so we're just gonna do one more time. So again, Control D. Okay, this time I think I have to rotate a little bit more, so it's 190, 180, and I have to place it somewhere around there. Okay, just very manual. Way of doing things. Okay, now this one is flip. Okay, so I have to rotate again like that, and I have to type minus 180. Okay, so now it's in a correct angle, but I just need to adjust properly. Okay, so I think the position of the wing is a little bit too high, so I have to select all the wing and I have to push down a little bit. Okay, so maybe around this location. And again, if there is unevenness, you just need to adjust manually for now. Okay, now finishing up with the wings, right? I'm gonna move to this little rocket engine, and you probably can guess, like, we're gonna use cylinder and we're gonna use extrude to create this detail here and at the bottom. Okay, so go ahead and create the cylinder, right? And again, because all the other object is in the way, I'm going to hide it for now. Press H. Okay, and again we use the same function just like we did with the rocket body. I'm gonna make this like smaller, right? And I'm gonna use insert edge loop, and I'm gonna put some line here. Okay, so I'm gonna select the edges, right, to adjust accordingly. Okay, something like that, right? And maybe one more line just to create the extrusion for me. Okay, so go back to object mode. Just look around and maybe make this a little bit smaller and push this downward a little bit and scale it down. Okay, so everything's in place. So go to face mode, double click it, select one of them, and then shift left double click it, and then we're going to use extrude. Okay, so I'm going to scale it downward or inside like that to create that nice little crease over here. Now for the bottom pieces, I'm going to be doing the same thing. So I'm going to select this one by one while holding shift. Okay, make sure nothing else are selected, and I'm going to do the same extrusion like we did with the other bottom rocket engine. Okay, so go ahead and click extrude, scale it downward. Okay, while this is being selected, click extrude again, but this time we're going to push inside. Okay, and scale like that. Okay, now if you want to create a variation, so while this is being selected, I'm going to apply the outward extrusion. So this is being selected, I'm going to use extrude, and I'm going to use scale. Right, so while this is being selected, I'm going to use move. Okay, just like that, and I want to do one more extrusion, pull outward and scale like that. Okay, so that's how I do the extrusion for this little rocket engine. Okay, so again, I'm going to unhide the other parts, right? Place this accordingly. Okay, maybe somewhere there, doesn't have to be really accurate. Okay, maybe push it upward. Control D, right? Place it accordingly. Maybe top view is good for me, right? Maybe like that. One more time, and I got this shape already.